My mother-in-law is destroying my life, my happiness, my marriage, and my mental health. And we have a baby on the way. Tender, loving care needed. My husband and I have been together for 5 years, married for a year and a half. We are expecting our first child and could not be more excited about becoming parents. Although my husband has made mistakes, he is on my team and has my back, especially when it comes to my mother-in-law. However, despite his support and willingness to implement boundaries, my mother-in-law continues to do things that are slowly chipping away at my mental health. The problems started during COVID-19. My husband, who was my boyfriend at that time, lived with his mother, and I lived with my family, including my 90-year-old grandfather with late-stage Parkinson's disease. My husband had to continue going to work throughout COVID-19, so we basically quarantined away from each other for the sake of my grandfather. At one point, when COVID-19 had subsided a bit, we had planned for my husband to stay with my family for a few weeks so we could see each other. The plan was that my husband would quarantine for a week before coming to my family's place. His mother knew of this plan. While he was quarantining, his mother decided to take an impromptu trip to Florida with 8 of her friends. This was during the travel ban, and came back with COVID-19. My husband and I could not see each other, and he had to miss work for 2 weeks without pay. When we confronted his mother to tell her how we felt, she flew off the handle and said a slew of hurtful things. This was the first time she accused me of forcing my husband to be mad at her, and accused me of being controlling. Apparently, if I were not in the picture, there is no way her son would be upset or treating her this way. From there, things continued escalating, especially while planning our wedding. We were having a small wedding, so I told his mother that she was welcome to invite up to 10 people of her choosing. She called me and asked if she could invite a few more, insisting that she would pay for the additional friends since she knew we were on a tight budget and could not afford to expand the guest list too much. She ended up inviting an additional 30 people, whom neither my husband nor I know. When we asked her how she was going to pay for the additional friends, she insisted that she never made such an offer. We were stuck with a wedding bill that had increased by almost 60% and no way to pay for it. His mother had also been a nightmare about other wedding-related things and had generally been acting as though the party was about her and she was the bride. At this point, my mother-in-law offered us $25,000 to cancel the entire wedding. She said that, since we clearly were not enjoying ourselves, the money would be better spent on something like a house as opposed to a wedding. Because we were so miserable planning the wedding, and also could not afford the additional people my mother-in-law had invited, we went through with it and canceled our wedding. We ended up eloping with a few close family members. When we asked for the $25,000, my mother-in-law insisted it was a misunderstanding and that she never offered us the money. We are both lawyers and had multiple conversations with my mother-in-law about the logistics of the $25,000. There was absolutely no misunderstanding. We never received the money. We ended up sending her a letter about how upset we were about the wedding and asking for an apology or some form of accountability. Again, we were gaslit, i.e., none of these things ever happened, and were attacked. I was accused of being the mastermind puppeteering my husband to be mad at her, and we were accused of having no consideration for how any of this makes her feel. My husband and I started therapy and learned about the importance of boundaries. We tried implementing boundaries and asked for some space while we work through how upset we are over the wedding and the lack of accountability. My husband's biggest boundary was to stop accusing me of puppeteering him to be mad at his mother. The talk about boundaries did not go over well. We were asked why we thought we could unilaterally make decisions. Why do you get to decide how it is going to be? And that we were intentionally trying to hurt her as punishment, despite her doing everything she could to make the situation right. She did nothing. To this day, my mother-in-law refers to this situation as a misunderstanding. Over the next few months, we had a distant relationship, but were able to see her on occasion. When we did see her, snarky comments would always be made. She often said things like, "Well, if you had been around more, you would know about that." Or, "Wow, you would think one would reach out to their parents and tell them that," etc. We never reacted to these types of comments. My husband and I eventually found out we were pregnant. We had been trying for a while, so we were overjoyed. A few weeks after finding out we were pregnant, my husband made a horrible mistake. He went to a strip club on a bachelor party and had a private, nude lap dance with a stripper. This was a very dark time for us. After intense therapy and many long and difficult conversations, my husband and I are in a much better place now and are committed to the marriage. When I first found out about the strip club, I kicked my husband out of the house so that I had some time to calm down. I was in my first trimester and was struggling with severe morning sickness. He, of course, went to his mother's house. I spoke with his mother about the situation and told her I needed some time, and to please keep this information private. Almost immediately after that phone call, my mother-in-law called my sister-in-law and told her everything. My mother-in-law then fabricated a story about how my sister-in-law found out and told my sister-in-law to repeat the same lie to me. My mother-in-law eventually came clean about the lie, but insisted she was not sorry for telling my sister-in-law. For me, this was the last straw. I called my husband and said that if our marriage was going to work out, he needed to be willing to walk away from his mother and focus on repairing the damage to our relationship. My husband said he needed to think about it, and I hung up in a fury. After I hung up with my husband, I realized almost immediately that I had given him an unfair ultimatum. I called him back less than 5 minutes later, apologized, and told him that he could handle his mother however he wanted, and that I would support him. Unfortunately, my husband had already told his mother that I asked him to cut her out of his life. After talking, my husband decided that he did not have the bandwidth to deal with his mother while he was dealing with a cheating crisis in his marriage. So he called her back and asked for some time and space to work on the marriage. He clearly communicated I had called back and apologized for what I said, and that he was making the decision to take a few weeks away to try and save the marriage and be there for me. This caused my mother-in-law to completely lose her mind. She sent a slew of abusive texts and emails, all directed at me. She accused me of breaking my marriage vows and the 10 Commandments by asking my husband to cut her out of his life. She told my husband that I was a path to unhappiness and that my ultimatums would leave him isolated and alone. She told him that I was akin to the false mother from the Solomon parable, because if I really loved him, I would never ask him to give up his family. She questioned my ability to be a mother as I did not hesitate to cut her out of my child's life. It got so bad that I was on the verge of a mental break. I stopped being able to work, eat, or sleep. I am surprised that I did not lose the baby. Based on our therapist's advice, we decided to explain to my mother-in-law that because she could not respect our request for time and space, that we would be temporarily blocking her on everything and would reach out when we were ready. That is when she started involving other people. She told my husband's grandfather that I was forcing my husband not to speak to her. This prompted the grandfather to get on a plane and insist on meeting us for lunch. My husband told him that we could meet for lunch, but that we were not open to discussing his mother because, at that time, we needed space. He agreed. We had a lovely lunch where the grandfather wished me and the baby well. At the end of lunch, he handed my husband an envelope. Inside was a 4-page letter about how horrible I was. My mother-in-law also started contacting my family and reached out to my husband's friends' parents, and eventually began texting my husband's friends directly asking them to meet up with them. At that point, my husband felt he had no choice but to reinitiate contact to ask her to stop involving other people. He wanted to give her one last chance to show remorse for the things said about me and understand that, in order to have a relationship, they needed to respect him as an adult capable of making his own decisions and respect us as parents. The conversation was gray. My husband basically had to force an apology out of her, which was always qualified with things like, "I am sorry, but someone should never make another person stop talking to their family." She agreed to respect our marriage but did not see a problem with her past behavior. I mentioned that I am worried to have her around our baby, and she accused me of being bizarre for being worried about that, because she is a good person. We hung up more confused than ever. Now, because she is unblocked, she is asking to meet up with my husband, not me, for lunch. I am a basket case. Everyone keeps telling me not to give her any of my mental energy, but I just cannot get over the things that have been said, and I have no faith that she will act differently in the future. I am so terrified of how she is going to act around our new baby. Whenever I am not actively doing something, I am thinking about this situation and living in fear of the next slew of attacks. I am scared to ask things of my husband because I do not want to be the type of controlling wife she has accused me of being. How do people live like this?